Metro Awakening VR is one of the most anticipated VR titles releasing in the near future. I've personally had this game on my radar ever since the first trailer dropped, and somehow I was invited to try the game early and show you all what I experienced.
I got to play through a handful of different sections throughout the game, totaling up to about 1.5 hours worth of footage. There were guns, creatures, good guys, bad guys, a whole lot of atmosphere, and a few jump scares. I will go into detail about my play sessions, but first I want to explain why I think this game is a big deal. There is a problem with VR, and if you only play standalone, you might not even be aware of it. And it all stems from the game that's the closest thing I can compare to Metro VR. Half-Life Alyx. Now, I could ramble on and on about this game, but long story short, Half-Life Alyx is a VR masterpiece. It was so good that nobody else making VR games had any idea how to make a game that was at that level of quality. Half-Life Alyx released in 2020, and for many people this is where VR peaked. Nothing released past this point has ever been able to compete with the standards set by this game. But maybe that's about to change. From what I played from Metro Awakening, I was thoroughly impressed. Now, these parts were cherry-picked by the devs to be the best bits of the game to show off to us without spoiling too much, so as for the 90% of the game I have left to experience, I don't know. But unless the rest of the game is drastically different from the stuff that I experienced, which I highly doubt, this is going to be a solid AAA VR experience, and that is refreshing. So now, let's actually go through my play sessions.
Once I'm in game, I'm greeted with a long, dark, iconic metro tunnel. Surrounded by hanging bodies, I'm slowly being moved towards the character you play as in the game. Once I got inside his head, I'm met with a huge, overpowering entity rushing towards me. But it was all in the head. I'm awoken by a concerned individual, telling me I'd pulled up to this checkpoint while completely spacing out. I explained it was just the strangest feeling of deja vu, and they let me through. Now, at the time of recording this, I had never played a Metro game before. Since then, I've now played through 2033, and I'm a decent way through Last Light, and I've got to say, looking back on this gameplay, it's awesome to see how well the world of Metro translates into VR. Being in these dark, claustrophobic environments made everything feel tense, which is exactly the type of stuff you'd expect from the Metro series. Arriving at my destination, I got off the trolley. I make my way through some barricades, becoming familiar with my movement options, and I meet this woman, Tasia.
Thank God you are back. Max has been up my butt asking where you are literally every 5 minutes.
Now, what I should have done here was stop and listen to the dialogue, immersing myself in the world. Instead, I bolted away, eager to see some of the action from other trailers. But then I realized I was in a room full of developers that probably spent several hundred hours meticulously and lovingly crafting each section of this game, and I just skipped past this interaction completely. I heard back, but alas, Tasia didn't want to speak to me anymore. I'd f***ed it. Moving on, I found out that I'd arrived at Akademicheskaya. And I had a pretty big smile on my face moving through this area. It's not often VR games put a bunch of NPCs in the same place as you, so I was having a great time messing around with them and all the little interactable things. But back on track, I'm looking for a guy called Max. I have no idea why, but that's what I get for neglecting Tasia earlier. Listening to the NPCs around me, I'm able to pick up that Max is at some sort of mushroom farm, which happened to be right around this corner. I was let inside and greeted with a very angry Max. While he was ranting at me about some mushroom problems, I took this time to go over what I had on my person. I had my backpack, which showed me my objective, and a charger which I could crank to charge my flashlight. Max started to get a little too shouty. Apparently my wife had destroyed his mushroom farm, so I tried to calm him down a little bit. After he was done shouting, I went to go find my wife. Walking down a metro tunnel, I came across this ominous door. It needed to be powered to open, so I took my charger and connected it to a nearby panel. It took me a minute to figure out how the charger worked here, but eventually I got it. Behind the door was something I was dreading. Absolute darkness. I turned my headlamp on and I pushed forward, ready for anything to attack me. Again, I had never played a Metro game before, so other than what was shown in the trailers, I had no idea what I was up against here. As well as that uncertainty, I was in the second group of playtesters, meaning we had to wait for the first group to get through their session. And while we were waiting, we heard screams, so I knew something was gonna happen here. I came across another door that I couldn't get through. I was told by Max that there was a generator that I needed to turn on. Tiptoeing my way through the darkness, I found the generator and turned it on. This game has a bunch of good interactables all the way through, from turning the key in the trolley at the very beginning of the game to pulling the cord on this generator. There was tons of physical things, which is key for a good VR experience. I was so busy opening containers and grabbing whatever I could find that I forgot that there was creatures out here to get me. I quickly dealt with this, what I think is a lurker, and I found this corpse chilling on a chair and treated him to a drink. Even though I was more cautious making my way through this next area, somehow another lurker managed to sneak up on me. But I was ready this time. After crawling through a tunnel carved out by the lurkers, I reached an area close to the surface, with snow and sunlight bleeding in from the ceilings. I tried to make my way forward when suddenly I started dying. This was a hazardous area, and I needed my gas mask and filters to progress. Again, I was an absolute Metro noob at this point, but luckily I found everything I needed nearby and I was ready to go. Searching through the archives, I found this huge dead creature hanging from the ceiling, and this woman who unfortunately didn't make it. Pretty sure this is my wife, as my character was quite calm during this moment. And they had this engraved pistol, which I thought was sick, so I just kind of stole it from their dead body. Apparently there's a few of these special weapons dotted around the game, and as someone who's obsessed with like skins and stuff like shiny Pokemon, I love this kind of stuff. Dripped out pistol in hand, I clambered through this next area. The lights were red, and I could hear voices up ahead. I was about to enter my first fight with other people. Sticking to the shadows, I snuck past undetected. Never mind. After taking one guy out, I scrambled to pick up his rifle and clear the area, but I wasn't quick enough, and I had my first death. But now, I had a better idea of how these guys worked. I was patient and methodical, effortlessly slipping by without a single... Okay, maybe I'm not the stealthiest person in the world. This time I did manage to clear out everyone who's shooting at me, so I was improving. This next bit had me try a silent takedown. Surely there was no way I could fumble the... And that was the end of the first play session, and I was having a ton of fun. Moving straight into the next session, we start at a point quite a bit later into the game. We're back in the metro tunnels, riding our trolley towards... This game is not afraid to throw you around. After my crash, the game does something which I don't think I've seen in a VR game before. My entire view is tilted and low to the ground, seemingly because my character's lying on the floor recovering from the crash. Messing with the player's view in VR is something a lot of games are scared to do, probably because VR can be quite motion sickness inducing as is, but for me personally, getting thrown around in this trolley and being forced to lay on my side after the crash was a really immersive experience. It's disorienting on purpose, and it's a detail that really stood out to me. I would love to see more of this deep-end VR stuff from games in the future. After sustaining multiple broken bones and a traumatic brain injury, a quick jab from my syringe fixed me right up. I continued through this carriage, and I met with an unfortunate soul surrounded by glowy green stuff. Immediately, I knew this area would be hazardous, so I preemptively put on my mask. Turning the corner, I started to notice something that I'm not the biggest fan of: spiderwebs. And you know what that has to mean.
Spiders?
When I enter the next set of corridors, what little lights there were suddenly turn off. Because of course they do. Why wouldn't they? Thank you, Soviet engineering, for this moment specifically. I see the spider from before just kind of chilling on the ceiling, and... that was that. Keep in mind that one spider just took me a whole magazine of bullets to kill. This next area was going to be hell. But all of a sudden, I find myself in a very cozy room. Warm lighting and a guitar to strum. This felt like the calm before the storm, and I was reluctant to leave this place. But it wouldn't be my last time here. I passed through corridors filled with pipes and odd noises. More spiders appeared and I dealt with them as best as I could. I crawled through a vent, one of my favorite things to do in video games. But I ended up right back where I started, in the cozy room. Now, I don't have the best sense of direction in the world, but something felt off about me getting back here. My character was also confused, so it wasn't just me going crazy. I got kind of stuck at this section of the game. It seems like I'd end up back in this room whenever I went, so let me explain what's happening here. If you listen closely to some of these pipes, you can hear voices. To get to the next section, you have to follow the voices. Otherwise, you'd be sent right back to the beginning in an endless loop. Like PT. There's actually a PT reference if you go the wrong way, which is really cool to see. The reason I had so much trouble in this section was because I was in a room full of people and it was a little noisy. Plus I wasn't wearing my earphones all the way in, so if someone on the dev team wanted to tell me something, I could hear them properly. So the voices in the pipes were a little difficult for me to pick up on at first. I arrived in a very big room compared to everywhere else I'd been. Something definitely felt off about the scale here. Why would I need all this space? Using a nearby control panel, I tried to make a bridge for myself to cross, but the controls gave out and suddenly people started flooding into the room. At this point, I'd been playing for a while, so I was much better equipped to deal with these guys. I managed to clear the building out and I got up to this room with a fuse box. I reset it to fix the control panel I was at earlier, but once again, guys with guns just appeared out of nowhere. I was swarmed. This was the toughest fight I'd had yet. Some of these guys were covered head to toe in armor. I ended up dying a few times in this area, but eventually I managed to clear out the entire room and I felt super accomplished. I got back to the control panel, crossed the bridge, and that was it. There was a few areas after this, but I wasn't able to get the footage for it. I will say though, I had an absolute blast with it, as well as the rest of my time with Metro Awakening VR. Before I was invited out to the studio to play this game, I was already really hyped, and after the play sessions I've had, I'm even more hyped, to be honest. I'm going to be streaming this game the second it comes out, and I'm going to be doing a whole playthrough, so stay tuned for that in the next month. The game comes out on MetaQuest 2, 3, Steam VR, PSVR 2, and Viveport on November 7th. Thank you so much to VERTIGO Games for having me out. It was an awesome experience, and thank you for watching. Bye!